So you don't get 3 generations here. Okay, so how did you end up in the Navy?
In the 1940s, 50s, and 60s and 70s, actually, they drafted doctors. And when I was 3 years out of medical school and starting my second year as a neurology resident at Matzah Hospital in New York, I got a personal letter from the Secretary of the Navy saying, "Greetings." And a few weeks later, I found myself at the U.S. Naval Hospital in St. Albans, Queens, awaiting to await firm orders. And I came back the day after Labor Day, this is September 1961, important day. And a yeoman comes running down the hall with orders for me saying I have 2 hours to get to the Brooklyn Navy Yard to aboard the USS Compass Rose. Oh my God. What does that mean? And not only that, I had put all the laundry except what I was wearing in the laundry the day on Saturday to be picked up that day. So I raced to the PX and bought whatever they had, which wasn't my size. Raced to New York, and drove back to New York to the room I was staying at, packed the valise, took a cab to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, got to the ship. I didn't even know the protocol, how to get on a ship. There is a protocol. Got on the ship, brought it to the captain. The captain said, "You're here to make sure that we can stay out for a month or two. That's your job. We don't want to have to go back to port." What are we doing? We're sailing around the Caribbean. What are we doing? You don't have to know. Okay. So it was kind of strange. There were 550 people on board. 250 of them were civilians, and it had this big dome on the foredeck of this frigate. And it wasn't until the next year, when the Cuban Missile Crisis hit, that I figured I was on a spy ship that was sailing around Cuba. But what do I know? Anyway, so I said to the captain, "Nobody knows where I am. I have to make a phone call." And he said, "Okay, you got 3 minutes to make a phone call, or we're later ready to cast off." So I called my mother. "Mom, hi. Bob, you never call me in the middle of the day. What's wrong?" I'm at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. "What are you doing there?" I'm on a ship." "What?" "Well, it's sailing." "Well, get off it." "I can't, Mom. I'm in the U.S. Navy. I'll see you in a month or two," screaming and railing and yelling, and I hung up, and that's it. Okay, so the next 5 minutes later, I'm in the sick bay, and my first patient comes to me, and he's a 17-year-old guy. It's his first day at sea. He's just out of boot camp, and he says he's dizzy. Well, I'm a neurologist. I mean, vertigo. It's a neurological problem. So I start doing a neurological examination because vertigo. I'm all about vertigo. I know the problem. And I get a tap on my shoulder from one of the corpsmen, and he whispers in my ear, "Mal de mer." Seasickness. Oh. Anyway, I had nothing to do for the next month, except 15 minutes a day, twice a day of sick call, and I only had 4 real patients during all that time. 3 meals and an elective movie. So they actually found a wooden deck chair, and I sat on the deck chair, and I read books from the library, which were Louis L'Amour and Mickey Spillane. I'd read for 15 minutes, I'd fall asleep. And then I'd eat lunch, and then I'd fall asleep. And I wake up for sick call, and I eat, and I slept about 18 hours a day. Anyway, the food was really awful. It was dormitory food. And it was a lot of bread, and a lot of potatoes, and ice cream after every meal, except breakfast. And I didn't eat, I was sleeping. I knew I shouldn't eat much, and I wasn't touching the bread. And a point that I should make. At that time, the Navy was not desegregated, and the only way, there were no women, of course, but the only way a man of color could join the Navy was as a cook or a mess boy. So the cooks were black, and the mess boys were Filipino. I don't know quite why that happened, but that's the way it was. And about 2 weeks after the voyage started, one evening there was a knock on my door, and there were 3 or 4 cooks and mess boys with a pan who came to my room, and they said, "You're not eating bread. You're Jewish. This is September. There are Jewish holidays, and maybe you need matzah."
In September.
In September. Yeah. So, like, how did they know I'm Jewish? 2, how did they know there were Jewish holidays in September? And 3, what did they know about matzah? Well, anyway, they had read about matzah in the Navy cookbook, and they had baked matzah, but they had never seen matzah. And the matzah, the pan was this thick. I was overwhelmed. I mean, the concern was really touching. I was very touched by this. I thought about it a lot for the rest of the voyage. I thanked them as best I could, and I explained to them why I wasn't eating the bread. And I understand they loved it, and they ate it the rest of the voyage.
So after you finished your month cruise, courtesy of the U.S. Navy, how did getting out of the Navy change you?
Well, the Navy, I got out of the Navy. I mean, I reached New York, went back to St. Albans, had orders waiting for me to go to the U.S. Naval Medical Neuropsychiatric Research Unit in San Diego. That was going to take 10 days to get to San Diego. So I packed the car, drove to San Diego, and I joined and entered this unit. I go to the administrative office, and they give me papers to sign, and they talk about all kinds of things. And then the administrative officer says to me, "Do you have a Navy tuxedo?" And I said, "What would I need that for?" "Well, to go to the dances at the officers' club." I said, "Well, I'll take care of that when I need it." And then he said, "Do you have a dress uniform and a sword?" "A sword?" I said, "What for?" He said, "Well, there were ceremonies." I said, "All right, I'll take care of that if I need it." And then I went to the unit, and I was really ticked off. I didn't want to do research. I was a clinician. I had never done any research. I had never done any research. I didn't want to do research. I acted out for a couple of weeks, and then I decided, I'm really bored. I better do something to earn my keep. So I started getting involved, and I started reading, and I started working with the people in the lab. It was clinical research, and I got more and more interested, and I started reading more and more, and I started learning things that I had not learned in medical school and in my internship and residency. And I started writing papers, and I got very excited. I actually ended up, the last couple of weeks that I was in the Navy, trying to finish up and coming in on Saturdays and Sundays to do more analysis of data. I found I really liked this, and I ended up writing 5 scientific papers that were published in medical journals. So then I got back to my residency, and now I had to make a decision in my life. What was I going to do with myself? I was destined from the age of 5. My father was a quick brainwasher, to open up an office on Park Avenue or something like that, to drive a Cadillac, to
Play golf.
Play golf every Wednesday. In fact, he bought me a set of golf clubs when I was in college. To play golf every Wednesday afternoon, which the doctors didn't that time, and become filthy rich, or go into a lab. So I thought about this for a year and a half, and finally applied for fellowship and went into a lab, and ended up my life as a professor of neurology, pharmacology, and physiology at the University of Miami, where I stayed for 33 years. So the Navy was very important to me. I mean, it was the catalyst for the rest of my life that changed my life, changed the way I was running my life, and made it a much more productive and happier life than I had thought it was going to become. I didn't become filthy rich, but it was. But it was.
We didn't start.
Nobody started. And I would say that the U.S. Navy, that I owe an enormous gratitude to the U.S. Navy, that it was two of the most important 2 years of my entire life, and I really think it was important. Thanks.